Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details. Representing the men and women on sporting fields across the globe, and especially in Port Adelaide and deep South Australia, two blokes leading the charge that it's okay to be a little bit crap as long as you try hard. It's now time for another Best Team Men podcast.
Gordon Bombay.
Gordon Bombay, right?
I'm the new coach.
Power Ducks! Yeah! The Mighty Ducks!
Ladies and gentlemen, this is such a massive moment. Best Team Men has taken a bit of a pause right now, and just when you thought that coronavirus would separate the whole of civilization and turn us against one another, it has brought people together. I would like to introduce you to the Mighty Ducks podcast featuring, as you know, from Best Team Men, Matt Burgess. And we spoke about this guy in our last episode, Matty, one of my favorite journos that you and I used to go home on a Saturday night and watch when he was living the life that we wanted to now.
Absolutely.
Garby, welcome.
Hey.
Thank you. Well, let me tell you, despite all the things that I've been fortunate enough to cover, this is something I have been desperate to do for many a year. Delve into the world of the Mighty Ducks and actually break it down and analyze it. So I'm delighted that I've finally landed gratitude to you two fine gents.
It's amazing, isn't it, Garby? Can you please just quickly talk through some of your resume? Because you've done World Cups, you've done Socceroos qualifying for so many campaigns, you've done EPL, you've done everything. I mean, can you list a couple of them and where this sits specifically now? We haven't even started, really.
Yeah, it's probably Ashes Tour, Mighty Ducks, World Cup soccer.
Yeah, I reckon that's
probably in between the two.
Yeah, I rate that. I reckon.
Not quite a World Cup, but above an Ashes Tour. So that's where I've got it at the moment.
Which Ashes Tour? 2005?
Probably the first one, which I was lucky to do, and then 2015. So just 2015's lower down the list, 2013, and then Mighty Ducks, and then the World Cups.
No, right.
We love this. All right, can we set the scene really quickly before we get into it? People know what we're going to talk about, which is great. We have so many things to get into. People have hit us up on social media as well. So, Matty, first of all, where are you located right now? Be descriptive so people can imagine if they're not watching this video.
So I'm currently in my spare room, which doubles as my wife's makeup studio and my music studio. So it's there's a bit going on here. I'm sitting in amongst about 4 or 5 guitars, about 1,000 pallets of makeup, and heaps of shoes.
What about you, Garby?
I'm in my apartment in Bondi Junction in Sydney, just enjoying a coffee with my West Coast Eagles Premiers 2018 mate.
Hang on.
Which I thought I would bring out for the occasion.
I took this off because I didn't want to go, And,
yes. I'm in my mum's house, which is just mum's outside watching Aladdin on Disney Plus, which is actually a really good starting point because I gave my mum access to my Disney Plus channel, and it was last weekend where I thought, you know what, we've got time to kill. I'm not used to sitting still, and I think all three of us are the same. It's really weird that we've lived such active lives, and when someone says don't do anything, you feel a little bit stir crazy. So we chucked on the Mighty Ducks franchise, and it was brilliant. We started talking about it on social media. So this podcast is basically our opportunity to talk about what we think and what people involved in social media. So, boys, let's get into it. Starting off with the movie, which was originally called Champions. It was called Mighty Ducks everywhere else. Australia has some weird licensing things. Observations to start us off, please.
So was that a licensing thing? Like, you've been researching the Mighty Ducks for the last week and a half or whatever it was. So did you come across why it was Champions here and nowhere else?
Some movies they do it for marketing, so
Right.
they do it specifically so it can connect with an audience. And I believe that, and people would probably be forgiven if they thought, I don't want to watch a movie about ducks. So they probably didn't make the connection about ice hockey and things like that. So it is a unique thing which only happened in Australia. With some movies, it does though.
Yeah, no, I've never really given it too much thought. I remember watching it for the first time, and I don't think I'd ever been exposed to ice hockey yet. What was it, 93? So I was 9 years old. So, yeah, I don't think I'd been exposed to ice hockey, and it was my first exposure. But I can tell you what, as soon as I watched it, I wanted to go get a set of rollerblades and grab myself a stick and a little rubber puck and cruise around the street with my mates.
That's an aspect to it. It was, despite it being a Disney film, it was actually really informative about the sport I had no idea about through the film, which is one of its great legacies. And being a kid and it being a sports movie with kids, like I remember being so excited to see it and then just being totally immersed in it afterwards. And then just doing everything, like buying all the merchandise. I had the whole Mighty Ducks tracksuit when I was a kid from Kmart, like had to get it straight away and wore it for years on end. And also was interested in ice hockey. And like my best mate comes from Canada, and I just like peppered him with questions about ice hockey for years after seeing the Ducks. And to him, it was just like, yeah, right, mate, like that's kind of what happens. But I was just infatuated with the sport through that film. So the legacy of it is, I think, enormous.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, the interesting thing is I went and purchased, I was living in Tasmania at the time, and I went and purchased rollerblades and hacked up all my backyard lawn because I wanted to be like, you know, I think everybody, it had an element of wanting to be like Charlie Conway because he was the protagonist and all that stuff. But it was such a strange movie at the time. I think it's one of those things that when you watch something as a kid and you go back and watch it as an adult and analyze it, it is completely different because you look for adult things. Which,
have they glorified drink driving?
Yeah.
He's got done DUI and he's just gone on to live an amazing life, and you know it changed his life. He coached a national team because of it. So
all right, so let's go into it, Garby. Let's start off with you, mate. Let's go with some talking points for Champions / Mighty Ducks and really delve in deep here because this is a movie franchise which has affected all of us and we have a lot to get through with, you know, we don't want to drag it on too long. So talk about some of your observations.
Observations from Mighty Ducks 1. I mean, look, it's the ultimate chumps to champions story, isn't it? And that's what grabbed people. But, you know, what amazed me on my observations from Mighty Ducks 1 is there's a couple of things. And we're going to go into detail of them later on. But Bombay is inherently flawed. Now, he comes across as, at the end, the Minnesota Miracle Man and this masterful coach who gets together this group of down on their luck borderline teenagers and galvanizes them. But he's inherently flawed the whole way through. And the mistakes he makes the whole way through are actually a great insight into his personality. Like he is, for me, inherently arrogant and egotistical. And that shows in D1, it shows in D2. He always falls foul to that constantly. And when you're a kid and you're watching it, you're like, they're giving Bombay such a rough ride. Look what he's doing for them. And they're just reading him the wrong way. And apart from that scene when he's being sarcastic to Coach Riley and they read it the wrong way, apart from that, he gets it wrong on so many different occasions, Bombay, yet somehow manages to come through. So that's one thing that I'm looking forward to breaking up specifically. Another aspect to it, an observation, is that for me, the Ducks are a one-man team, and they always were. Without Adam Banks, the Ducks don't become what they were. Like every other player in that team, maybe in D2, they start to go up a level. And the recruitment of Banks, I think, is fascinating. It's a great storyline and how that actually comes about and whether that was a wrong move from Bombay. But he's arguably, and I won't say this lightly, pound for pound, the best ice hockey player for his age in the world. I think that is proven by the end of D2 in the world. And I think he carries that team through to their ultimate triumphs.
I've got to hand it to Bombay, though. He really fought to have Banks on the team. None of the other players wanted him. So,
yeah, but I think also he was trying to prove to Riley, I think there was a bit of a dick measuring competition there because he wanted to kind of show it to his former coach and go, you know what, I'm going to get one up over you, probably mentally as well. But if you take it back a little bit, some of the things we don't know about this District 5 team. First of all, so Bombay, who gets the DUI, gets community service, and he says to his limo driver, drive on the ice. So imagine if the ice broke and all the kids died, that is a weird movie to start off with, really reckless. Then Charlie's mum gets on the ice. So this is, first of all, really, really reckless, where if I was Charlie Conway's mother, I'd go, you are not playing for this guy who was obviously not teaching you morals about drink driving. He's a lawyer, untrustworthy. And then, of course, he gets on the ice and does this stuff. So immediately they start on a bad foot. I don't know the point where they get his trust. Where's the former coach? They're part of this like little pee-wee league. There's so much unorganized chaos, which turns into a championship. It's fascinating.
It's like what Garby said, though. He just backed himself in. He had this arrogance and this confidence about him that even when she tested him about driving on the ice, he grew up on the ice. It's okay. It's fine. Don't worry about it. The kids they're never in trouble. They're never in danger. It's fine. And the other thing that I just thought about then is, he got touted as the Minnesota Miracle Man. How many people in Minnesota really watch D5, District 5 hockey? Well, why does everyone in Minnesota know about him? Like it's Pee-wee hockey.
But they clearly did, because think about the depth and breadth of media coverage of Pee-wee hockey in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
It got in the paper.
Every single result is back page news. That league is the biggest thing in town. You know what? It sounds far-fetched, but think about it in Texas, right? High school football is number one. Maybe Pee-wee hockey in Minneapolis, Minnesota is just the number one ticket in town. I don't know. Certainly seemed that way. The amount of reporters on the beat of Pee-wee hockey is extraordinary.
I think if I was the owner of the Timberwolves or the Vikings, I'd be pretty pissed off, to be honest. Throw a bit of coverage this way, guys.
It is fascinating to look at as well, especially with the Hawks, because obviously Gordon Bombay was the man responsible for having the runners-up pennant hanging from the rafters in the rink. But if you think about Coach Riley, he's obviously been there since Bombay was a child. And when you think about it, every local sports team has one of these characters who's been at the club since you were a kid and he's still there right now. And to hold on to that anger and arrogance is fascinating. And what I also learned from when Adam Banks went to the Ducks, father figures is something which is a massive theme throughout that first movie. Charlie's dad wasn't in the picture. Bombay's dad passed away. Adam Banks's father still wore a Hawks jacket when he was playing for the Ducks. I mean, Dad, what's going on?
A bit of support, Dad.
Don't support the other team.
It's a crazy concept. But I'm glad we're on the subject, because the issue of Banks moving from the Hawks to the Ducks, for mine, is arguably the most intriguing of D1. Now, Bombay is built up as this happy-go-lucky, by the time he gets over his inner demons, go for your life and play for the love of the game and just skate and have fun and all that sort of stuff, right? He has taken a kid or his mates in under 13s, under 12s, to play for his team to the district lines. Sorry, but that is utterly ruthless. Now, let me pose this question to you. Let's say the script was flipped and it was the Hawks who did that legally by the rules. Banks, the best player in the world for his age group, is playing for the Ducks or District 5. And they have a look at the district lines and the Hawks say, hang on, you're a Hawk. Imagine if he was taken from the Ducks to the Hawks. I'm sorry, but surely there should have been some common sense. Listen, it's Pee-wee hockey.
I agree. And they invested so much into it as well, didn't they? Because he was obviously a game changer. And it's fascinating to see that progression of Adam Banks, because it was in D1, he was forced to choose basically no hockey or play for the Ducks. In D3, he was playing for varsity or JV. And the second movie is the only one where he didn't have to choose his future, where he was playing for Team USA. He's a hard luck story. He's always injured. People are bullying him, but he's the best on the team, he's just a fascinating guy to follow his journey. And I did say on social media, it fills everybody with such warmth that he finally got his moment to score in the shootout, because he deserved that as well.
The other thing I'm going to bring up is these kids have got such a level head on their shoulders at that age. I remember, what was it? Maybe halfway through the movie where Gordon's having a coffee in Charlie's mum's diner, and he's talking about the missed penalty shot and stuff like that. And then he just put it into perspective. He said, another inch that way, and you would have missed completely. And I'm not thinking about that when I'm 11.
Let's talk about a character, Fulton Reed, very, very quickly before we find out what actually happened in between D1 and D2. So the fascinating thing which Brandon Hancock via Instagram has raised, he said, obviously, Gordon Bombay is given time off from his career as a lawyer, and he's given a driver and a limo, and then he's sacked. But the limo driver actually stays with the team for the whole movie, which is some sort of incredible thing. But then Bombay allows Fulton to smack hockey pucks into the car. Now, when you think of how much that's going to cost, obviously it's not an insurance job, but he allows that just to get his point across. That is also irresponsible, because what if he missed and he killed the limo driver? This movie could have just been about murder.
Yeah, you've got 12 or 13 12-year-olds dying in a pond, and then a limo driver's been struck in the head with a hockey puck. So, yeah, Gordon's not starting real well here.
Yeah. The issue of the limo driver, I saw that question. Interesting. I get the feeling that he, along with Gordon, was so fed up of the corporate Ducksworth life that he walked out with Gordon. And it just wasn't explained. Now, Gordon gets his payout. He's happy to go. I get the feeling the driver said, mate, I'm with you. I'd rather just take my payout, spend a year coaching this team, supporting this team with you, and stuff that corporate life of living for me anymore. I'm your boy. And that's the call he made.
The other thing, and I'm not one to judge a book by its cover, but I don't know where he was going to get a job otherwise. I think he was pretty happy to hang on to with what he's got.
The payout must have been decent. There would have been hush money as well, like keep everything quiet, you're a driver, you take a year away, non-compete clause, we'll pay you because you don't repeat these stories and send them out to the press about, this corporate law firm that was doing all these dodgy things and greedy things. And he was like, yeah, I'll take my money, I'll go watch some hockey and I'll keep quiet for a year. Suits me.
It's fascinating to view as well that the success of the Ducks, even though Ducksworth wasn't really involved towards the end, it'd be interesting if he did have a different surname, because obviously the whole franchise and then in the NHL, the Anaheim Ducks were based on this guy who run a law firm. So if his surname was Johnson or something, they'd be called the Mighty Johnsons, which would be a different movie again.
But he sort of turned his back on the Ducksworth, right? To back Riley and Banks's dad, who were probably wealthy clients of his and, part of the Purple Circle, Minneapolis, Minnesota. But his name was still attached and they were successful.
So let's wrap up the first one. And I'd love to know your opinion, guys, on your probably leaders in the movie, the first one. Let's talk about on the ice, because only a handful of them progressed to go and represent Team USA, which we'll get to. But for you, who were the game changers? Because we know in the actual movie, there were some game changers. Banks joining the team, and he had an impact before he had to go to hospital. But then we had the brother and sister combination, the figure skaters, who were there probably for about 5 minutes, but still played their role as well. In your opinion, we'll start with you, Garby. Who do you believe was the most player and personality that had impact in the first Mighty Ducks?
Well, Banks obviously gave them quality, which they didn't have at all. Goldberg was actually a decent goalie once he learnt about a team, right? Later on, we find out that he had his limitations, but in D1, Goldberg can actually play. Like, think about when you play junior sport. The big fat kid is pretty handy, right? Like, I remember playing soccer, and you had a big centre back who was huge. You couldn't get around him. Like, under 12s, under 13s ice hockey, you stick him in goals. He's pretty useful. So Goldberg was there. And then Conway rises as, I think, through the influence of Banks and having Bonbat, who he loves, he improves slowly but surely from being the player they called Spazway early on to actually a decent player. So they were the keys, I think, but then it drops away. You had a lot of liabilities in that team, like Pete Carp and Averman, like utterly useless, and they just got carried by Banks and a few of the others.
Yeah, I think Averman was good for team morale more than anything. Definitely not so much for his hockey ability. Guy Germain, or Guy if you're in Australia, he was probably one of my favourites. He was just a no fuss, didn't really talk himself up, wasn't too flashy, just got the job done. Didn't try and do too much, and he was the first one out of all of them with a girlfriend. So, to me, he was a king.
Well, there's a couple of things to take out as well. If you did miss some of the facts on social media, that Guy Germain and Fulton Reed are brothers in real life. I had no idea until researching that. Then outside of the franchise, they're brothers in real life. When you watch the film as a child compared to an adult, when you watch it as an adult, you probably don't understand how politically incorrect the term the Oreo line is. referring to the to African Americans. Like that is, you can't say that now. So that's
no way.
And then I guess let's wrap up with D1 boys by asking, do you think that Charlie Conway was captain because Gordon Bombay wanted to get into his mum's pants? You can see him tickling him outside their house, which is weird to watch. Coach, stop tickling me. We're having a great time. What's the relationship? What's going on with that? We need to discuss it, because this is like when your dad's the coach and he gives you the best and fairest. It can't happen.
Well, my dad coached me under 19s West Adelaide and dropped me for a grand final. So, I wish Gordon Bombay was my dad at some stage. Yeah, I was a bit stiff, but anyway, yeah. Look, it's a strange one, isn't it? And he was very full on into the relationship, Gordon. I remember when they were out looking at that Christmas tree, and she was pointing at the house or something, and he goes, "Oh, which one's mine?" "Oh, settle down, mate. You've gone for 2 coffees." Like, it was just a bit full on.
This is a controversial point, but was Bombay's mum batting above her average with Gordon? Like, for me, massively.
I see.
The guy's a successful lawyer,
good-looking
guy, young. She's a single mom. Like, I always thought, like, dude, shouldn't you be out, like, going to a bar somewhere and just trying to find a woman without any of those strings attached? Like, to me, I just always thought she was lucky to have him. Yet he was always really pushing it.
Yeah, she made him work for it.
Well, maybe that was part of the theme of the first one as well, that Bombay really needed to level out and be grounded and go back to start at kind of ground zero again. So that was him kind of just starting at the bottom, and then he works his way up into the fame, which came with D2. So obviously we know that the Ducks beat the Hawks, which is amazing. I don't know, but Coach Riley went on to work at the Daily Planet, Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, and he was working there for a while. But what happens in between D1 and D2? And this is interesting to know, because do the Ducks continue on the following season or is there a junior program? Do the Hawks just maintain their dominance? Obviously, 7 of them go on to represent Team USA, which starts us off at D2.
Yeah, and I think 3 or 4 of the Hawks just decided to go fishing that day, and saw the Ducks rollerblading through the streets of Minneapolis, and thought, here's our chance to get a little bit of revenge. And they didn't account for Fulton, who wasn't actually with the main pack at the time, and they got themselves into a little bit of trouble, the poor Hawks.
Yeah, but see, you asked the question of what did the Hawks do? Did they go on and just win? They might have been proud to be Hawks, but don't forget, Coach Riley says, you lose this game, none of you make the team next year.
That's
Who's
right.
to say he didn't stick to his word? None of them make the team next year. And the Hawks actually, in Riley's mind, will go 1 step back to go 2 steps forward, getting rid of all these guys who might not win a title next year, but will start to build up. So all of those guys might have been off the team. And the Hawks, that whole era might have been fragmented enormously. As for the Ducks, I assume they just gave up the right to play Pee-wee hockey to go and represent America at the Junior Goodwill Games. I mean, it seems like a pretty good trade-off.
Well, that's an interesting point.
We need to unpack that. Sorry, Matty, you go.
I was just going to say, that's an interesting point, because with the Banks trade, he got moved to D5 because of where he lived. So if those Hawks got put off the team, they couldn't just go play for another team because of where they were currently.
Correct.
So he's effectively ended their hockey career right there, just because they lost one game. It's not like they can go and join another team down the road. They're stuck in that zone.
That's probably why none of them made the Team USA side, because the question is, if only 7 of the Ducks made the 14 in the squad, you think, okay, so the Hawks have been so good since Bombay was a junior. How none of them can get a look in to play for Team USA is a joke in itself. But then you think about some of the players from the first Mighty Ducks, and you think Jesse's brother. Imagine the conversation that Jesse's dad would have to say, mate, Jesse's through to Team USA, but his younger brother, you're out. And that happens in sport a lot, where you have a really good brother and the shit one's drafted just to keep the good one happy.
Man, I get the feeling Terry Hall was so happy to be rid of Jesse. Like, come on. How annoying would Jesse Hall be as a brother? Like, okay, he's better than you, firstly, but he does not shut up. And he's just angry and opinionated at everything. Terry Hall was decent, but he wasn't as good. But he was just a nice kid who got pushed along by his dad and his brother into everything. I get the feeling he was more than happy for Jesse to go along to the Goodwill Games and he can just do his own thing.
Out of the shadow.
In Minneapolis and just be rid of him for a minute. Yeah,
If you follow you follow the life of Terry Hall with what happened outside of hockey afterwards, he went and pretended he got bashed with a hate crime. So that happened in real life, and that made things really awkward for him as well. So he's gone on to probably worse things. What about the selection process of how we get to Team USA? Because this is the most publicized team that we have seen in world sport. The press conferences are bigger and attended by more people than at a FIFA World Cup. It is ridiculous.
Garby's probably the best to comment on that. He's been to a World Cup and a few Ashes and stuff like that. So how did it compare? You know, like you got probably a couple of hundred people at a Gordon Bombay press conference that gets crashed by the Eastland team, and there's some polar bear running around asking give people bear hugs and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, it looked like a bit of a circus.
It seems unrealistic, and yes, it is to an extent. But is it beyond the realms of possibility? I'm not so sure. Now, they go from being this down-and-out team who have like magazines strapped to their pads to winning their division up against probably the best-funded team in junior sports in America, in the Hawks, right? That is a story that captures the attention of the nation. So, by the time they get to become Team USA, I can understand why they're still in that zone of that story being so encapsulated for everyone in the United States. Not to mention as well the fact that Hendricks wants so much money in and so much publicity that everyone has to basically catch on. Now, the team selection as a result of that is a complete stunt. It is a stunt. There is no way on earth that they are the best individual players across the country. Doesn't make sense. But did Hendricks really care? All they wanted was to maximise revenue for them. They sponsored this team. Let's get the Ducks together. We'll chuck together 7 or 8 other, in a couple of cases, like Julie the Gap, quality players. In the majority of them, absolute just show ponies, right, who will attract more attention. But they didn't care. The Goodwill Games don't even exist anymore. They were probably dying a very slow death at that stage. It's like, it's like the Commonwealth Games. Just try and get any sort of publicity for it that you can. Let's get the Ducks together. That'll at least have some eyeballs watching this tournament, and Hendricks profits as a result. It was a complete show for them and nothing more than that.
I had never heard of him before this movie, and I thought this is amazing. How good's a youth Olympics? Like, why isn't this bigger than it actually is? Or why isn't it a thing in real life? Or I thought it was amazing.
Well, it seemed pretty big, and the whole world was into it. It kind of had a bit of a Cool Runnings Jamaica feel about it, and the whole world was watching, which is great. Everybody was there, apart from the parents of the kids who decided to stay at home and not go and support their children at a huge international event, which again, shit parenting. I mean, just go and support them, because who knows? Like, Hendricks has obviously paid for their flights and accommodation, which is fantastic. They've put Coach Bombay up in this beautiful house. He's having drinks with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, talking about hockey coaches, and it's fascinating, but there's still elements of leadership missing, which Bombay, once again, as you said, Garby, he needs to go out, find himself, come back and get to know these kids once again. There's certainly some characters in this movie that have developed and, as you said, have no skills, but someone like Julie the Cat has all the skills in the world, and it takes her until the end to kind of be discovered.
I mean, for mine, the only legitimate add-on selection that you cannot criticise at all is Julie the Cat Gaffney. Like, okay, the team is brought together because they're a show and they'll deliver some attention. Banks is in there on skill. The rest of them, I'm sorry, like, you're just there because you're part of the Ducks. Julie the Cat, like, he's second best player in this. Portland maybe gets in on quality, but then, the ill discipline is an issue. But, okay, he changes the culture of the team because of his physicalness. Dwayne Stick Handler, can he play structured hockey? No. Louis Mendoza, yes, 1.9 seconds blue line to blue line, fascinating. He can't stop. How does he make the team? Kenny Wu, yes, great skater. He's about 4'3". How can he play against a team like Iceland? Who else did they bring in? Who else did they bring in as an extra player with that group? I think
they ended up bringing up Russ Tyler towards the end of it as well, which we need to discuss, because there's obviously registrations that you need to have, and he's just decided to come off the street, where he wasn't the best player in that street game either, because he had a knuckle puck which looked fantastic. But it's like, hey, you know what? There's a qualification process, and you've got to follow paperwork to actually have a team put in. As you know, when it comes to a World Cup in anything, you put a squad in, you can't have a late change. So already they've got a cheating culture, which Bombay brought in the first movie.
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah.
You're 100% right. It happened with the Banks thing, and it festers again. He will do whatever it takes to win. This whole Banks, Gordon Bombay, just for love of the game and just skate is a nonsense. He will do whatever it takes to win, and if it means sidelining someone else, then so be it. But in terms of allowing Tyler in, as I said before, the Goodwill Games were a dying product. I think the organisers were like, just do whatever you can to sort of publicise your own teams and make it as good a spectacle as possible. We don't care anymore. This is the last Goodwill Games we're ever going to have because no one gives two rats as it stands.
I've got a scenario to throw up to you guys. So, like Jared pointed out, none of the parents went. So Charlie's mum wasn't there. She wasn't in LA.
She remarried.
Well, yeah, she remarried, but there's obviously a history there with Gordon, right? So, they're the boys have had their little blow up at Gordy because of his little off rink antics and stuff like that. And imagine Charlie's mum ringing him that night, going, "Oh, how's Gordon going?" "Oh no, the boys are off him because he's been out on a date with the Iceland trainer." How do you reckon?
That's exactly right.
How do you reckon Charlie's mum would have responded to that? She'd be filthy.
You can see how close Charlie is with his mum in the first one. And I'm like this with my mum. And then you go, you know what? This is great. She's got a connection with my hockey coach. But then she goes and remarries a couple of months later. And it's all over the shop. So he's getting mixed messages. And as you said, Matty, he's in the middle of it now. Charlie's supposed to be the leader, the captain of this team. And then his coach is out spotting, having ice cream with the enemy. It's not Charlie's job to bring Gordon back into line. The job of the coach is to be the leader and mentor of these young, impressionable kids. He's not one of the kids. Grow up, Bombay.
I feel like sorry, I was just going to say, I feel like there's something else playing out in the background. I reckon Hans has got a little bit to do with all this in the end. And
Hans is with Charlie's mum.
No. Hans takes over. Obviously, he starts to mentor Gordon. So, he turns it around for him in the end and starts to show him a little bit of perspective. And that's, for me, that's when things start to change for the Team USA.
Oh, completely. And look, Charlie's mum was just never that set on Bombay. Like, she was just never that into him. Like, she liked him. She thought he was a good role model for Charlie. He's attractive, all right. You always felt like there was something missing for her. Why did she remarry so quickly? Why was she so happy for him to go trial in the minors all of a sudden? This pipe dream that was never going to amount to anything. I think she was more than happy for him to be gone for a little bit. Like, she was just never set.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things about the minors. You raise a really good point, Garby, and I think we should probably unpack the whole Hendrix sponsorship as well, because there's a lot of money which is being handed over. But the fascinating thing is Bombay gets injured in his tryout to make the NHL, and obviously it's a career ender. Obviously the worst injury anyone's ever got, because he doesn't have another crack at it, and it's turned him off ice hockey playing forever. But then he gets off the bus and gets into Hans's brother's car.
Get in.
What is it? The only thing he took was a bag and a hockey stick to move his whole life to try out for the NHL? I mean, what are you doing, Bombay?
You got nowhere else to live other than Hans's shop?
Man, he knew deep down he was never going to. How old's Bombay by then? Like 30 to 35, right?
Definitely, yes, yes.
I mean, like, he only got the trial because of what he did coaching the Ducks. Like, everyone in America is just swept up in this story. And they're like, this is good publicity. Let's just give Gordon Bombay a trial. It'll be great for our minor league profile. He can probably still play and carry his own. He's never going to make it. Bombay knows that deep down. So he's going for a few games. He's not taking that much stuff. And he's coming back. It's just, that's all it was. It was built up to be far more than was ever possible.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the other interesting point is he's gone from not playing hockey at all to a minor league setup. No bush league. No local league, nothing. Like, generally, if you get an SANFL or a state league, pre-season, you're generally playing in the suburbs somewhere. So he's gone straight from being a lawyer to almost killing a bunch of kids to coaching the most unbelievable hockey final ever to trialing in the minors. It's a bit of a story. And
then he gets this massive sponsorship from Hendrix where they offload so much cash to him, which is unbelievable. And what I wanted to ask, there is a moment in D2 where a couple of the boys get on the Zamboni and they drive it through the rink and everything smashes and they just look a little bit surprised and they go, "Oh, we're okay." did Hendricks pay for the repair? Because that's not something as simple as they roll in a new rink and go, nah, we'll fix that. Because for me, that's almost like, get out, kids, see you later. And if Bombay has used Hendricks' money to cover that, cheater. Again, Bombay.
Yeah, I remember going away on, like under 14s or under 15 representative footy teams and stuff like that, and the coach coming in at 10 p.m. going, if I hear you talking again, you're not playing tomorrow. These blokes have driven an automobile through the rink, crashed it through, ruined the ice. Probably there's a game on there that night, and they're all good.
They're above the law by this stage. Like, they are the most publicised team in American sport. They are above the law, and Hendricks was happy to cover their asses and Bombay's ass as long as they won. And I always found Hendricks, the owner, or manager, whatever he's, the CEO of the company who's, chaperoning him around the whole time. How on earth is he there putting so much pressure on them to win a toss, or Gordon loses his job and everything's gone, when he knows that all they are there for is the publicity, to publicise his company? It's just rotten. Like, surely he should say to Gordon at some stage, listen, man, I know we could have collected like a much better team.
Here's a question as we look towards the end of D2, the Mighty Ducks. When they decide to change their jersey mid-game, now, watching back on the movie, the commentator says apparently it's allowed, which is okay. However, you would have thought that if this is Team USA, at least they would be wearing USA colours with a duck on the front of their jersey. But they've gone completely different, similar colours in a way, like a colour scheme to the first movie, and they start quacking again. So once again, I think you're right, Garby. It's the stunt. It's the idea of getting this team in to showboat, results not mattering.
Completely, and that's all it was about the whole way through. And Bombay's coaching efforts in D2 far surpassed anything he did in D1.
Do you think that he was that focused on his coaching that Bombay went out for ice cream with the Iceland bird, took her back to the hotel or his big pad that Hendricks gave him, got intel on the dentist and used that strategically to get the win? He's always thinking about how to play someone.
She's a decent piece as well. I didn't mind her.
It's unbelievable. But, okay, Bombay makes the wrong call, right? Like, there's no doubt, just stay away from the Iceland team. Danson's chucking out all these jibes and these insults. Like, there's just no need. But, can the kids just shut up? Let him go and have a lick of ice cream. He's a grown man.
All right. So, question that I like to do as we wrap up D2, how long do you think it would have taken to set up those Coke cans for Mendoza to stop in front of? Because once they knock down, it's a good half-hour job to set them all up again.
Yeah, I was actually when Garby was talking about, the mix and the players coming in and, he could do the 1.9 second blue line to blue line. I actually had that thought, who was the poor bloke that had, or female, that had to set up those cans for him to knock into all the time? Because you'd be filthy. You'd want a pay rise.
Well, it was Hans who did it, right? I mean, that
it was too.
Bloke, the guy's 85. I mean, as if he has the ability to do that.
I've got to actually, while we were talking about the trainer from Iceland, I've just been looking up facts. She was known as Coach Maria, Marria. Okay. Her real name is Maria, Maria. Okay. And she was the only person on the Iceland team who was actually from Iceland.
Interesting. It's an interesting stat. The other interesting thing is whenever you play professional sport, and you can't get much more professional than the Junior Goodwill Games, you hand in a team sheet. Now, on your team sheet, it has your players, your substitutes, your match officials. That's about it. Now, if their teacher, Miss McKay, is not on that team sheet, she cannot coach the team. Cheating, out.
Oh, disqualified.
It's not right.
No.
What's Bombay doing? Okay, he wants to make a point. Dude, if you're going to make a point, okay, if you're 10 minutes late to the locker room, fine. Don't rock up 10 minutes into the game.
Yeah,
all
the crowd goes quiet all of a sudden. Let's have a joint silence so everyone can hear the bloody duck thing in his mouth. Oh, I wonder what that is. Everyone's quiet all of a sudden.
The arrogance of the guy knows no bound. I'm telling you, The whole way through, it is Bombay's rules, Bombay's way. He thinks he'll get away with anything.
You're so right. Well, they end up getting the win, and then they celebrate and they sing "We Are the Champions" sitting around a campfire. Russ Tyler, obviously, with the knuckle puck, and we get to him a little bit more in D3. He's recruited apparently one of the best hockey players in the world after not playing any junior peewee hockey. He's just playing in the street with a rubbish bin and a fake puck, and he's recruited as the knuckle puck guy, which is weird. So let's move into D3. And then we'll get to some social media questions as well. Apparently, the majority of the Team USA side get a scholarship at Eden Hall. They all want to go to the same area, which is great. It's Bombay's place that he used to go to, and they're all happy because they've got studies and they've got hockey and they've got to take on the varsity team.
Did any of them miss out? Did any of the Ducks actually miss out on a scholarship? I know Dean Portman didn't go, but did any of them not actually get offered a scholarship?
They all got through. D3 is the only movie where there were no recruits to the side. Is the first movie, so Charlie's wearing his normal Mighty Ducks jersey, and he's obviously grown up a little bit. He's gone through puberty. So you think when you play junior sport, you've got to pay for your jersey. So say you're paying $50 to $100 to get that. You only get one of them. Now you get two if you're lucky. But he all of a sudden has an adult-sized one with the letter C on it. That is the first time that we see he is captain with the C on the front of his jersey in D3 when he's skating around. I mean, did he get that for himself? I remember when I was growing up, I used to get Inside Cricket magazine and I bought an Australian badge and chucked it on the front of my helmet. So when I played Twilight cricket in Tasmania, I looked like I was a test player. Real dickhead move. And I reckon that's a bit of Conway.
Yeah, there's definitely Charlie in that.
Oh, he's become completely entitled, right? Like, he thinks by this stage, it is Conway's team. It's a bit of, and I love the guy, and it's a bit of Lucas Neal towards the end of his Socceroos career. Like, he's completely lost perspective that it's not your team, Lucas. It's Australia's team. Like, if you're not being picked, step aside. Great. Conway, the only captain for this team.
The other thing that Charlie's done is he's gone into the Coach O'Rien's school, and you know, he's tried to say, well, no, we've been the Ducks for however long now, like you've come into us. No, I don't think it really works that way, Chuck. I reckon you've come into someone else's territory here. Like, you're very lucky, Garby said, you're very lucky to be here. Maybe do your best at trying keeping everyone on side rather than, you know, doing what you did and end up, you know, going with Fulton to a theme park, an indoor theme park, and riding the roller coaster until you threw up.
Yeah, and you know what? There's a lot of indoor shopping centres where they go in, the theme of the movies, where the guys are rollerblading through. Now, obviously, they've either got really shit security at the Westfield, Minnesota or whatever it is, but, I mean, don't let the kids rollerblade through and, like, push people into a fountain and stuff. I mean, the kids are committing crime still. What fascinates me...
Centro, Minneapolis.
What happens with this whole setup when it comes to college sport in America? So you've got the varsity and the JV team, but apparently the most important game is when they have the showdown. So does that mean that they are in the same league? It's an outside game, like a cup game where they play against one another, but this is the game that they have to prepare. And what I thought was, like, this is basically your Ollie Roos playing against a university side. I mean, they should win. The Mighty Ducks team should be the favourites. They are the world-winning championship team playing against a college team. Are we really underestimating that?
I disagree. I think the varsity team should have been, like, overwhelming favourites. Like, they're a year or two older, right? They're a team that's supposed to be being handpicked for the NHL out of college. The JV team, apart from Banks, who makes the varsity team, are just way below in standard. So, I mean, the fact that it was even a matchup that was close is a slight on the varsity team for mine. They should be completely overpowering them. But the game is an interesting concept. I mean, it's clearly tradition that you just play each other. They play in different leagues, but they play this game, which is tradition. And I don't mind it. I reckon it's great. It's good tradition, and everyone looks forward to it.
The other thing, the first game that the Ducks played for Eden Hall, just let this sink in. They were 9-0 up. 9-0.
Yeah.
And they lost. They lost 9-0 in a period to play.
Why? Why'd they lose? They can't play two-way
hockey.
You got to take out the trash.
Yes, you got to take out the trash.
Coach Orion was, for me, he's the best coach all the way through. Like, He's the only one who had the tactical nous to teach them to play proper hockey. Like, Bombay was a great coach. But I don't think he could have taken. Bombay steps aside clearly because he knows his limitations as a coach. He just doesn't have the background of the tactical nous that someone like Orion has.
His only weak moment was when he asked the question, how long does it take to score a goal less than a second? Because if one of those players weren't very quick and didn't get out of the way, they're hit in the head by a hockey puck that Coach Orion throws at them and they're dead. So there's some real inconsistencies about these coaches looking after the safety of their players, just trying to prove a point.
Yep, agree. The other thing that comes to mind is Gunnar Stall's obviously been naturalised as an American and received a hockey scholarship as well, and he's gone straight to varsity. So, and it's staggering that him and Julie the Cat didn't recognise each other throughout the whole movie. Like, phenomenal.
Well, yeah. I mean, how embarrassed would you have been to be on that Iceland team? I know that Gunnar Stall was the nice guy in the end when Julie the Cat saves his penalty and. He stretches out the hand and says, well done. But, I mean, the way in which they conducted themselves. So I think he's undergone a complete transformation in order to pursue his dream of playing NHL, changed his name, changed his accent, changed countries. And Julia the Cat, who was obviously very fond of him, was just happy to go along with it and just let him grow into this new persona.
So she's all part of the plan, you reckon?
Well, it could be witness protection, and we spoke about this on social media. He's actually left Iceland in witness protection because he's so scared of the dentist, and he's gone, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to base myself over here at Eden Hall, and this is the time that I can stay away. He's changed his accent, as you said, he's changed his passport, and he's cheated the system. So Bombay has probably helped him out as his attorney, like he did getting Dean Portman back in and Adam Banks back to the JV side. Bombay has his hand in everything.
Everything.
Funnily enough, this movie, the D3, is the movie where ice hockey actually features the least. You only see them playing ice hockey, I think, 2 times, then in the kind of scratch match that they have early in the morning as well. So the focus is what happens off the ice, which I think we need to talk about because there's a couple of things that they get taken out to a fancy restaurant, the Mighty Ducks side, and they have to pay for everything or wash dishes. They unleash these fire ants into the room of the varsity guys, which could have caused permanent damage. I mean, it's quite irresponsible. And how nobody noticed old mate Dwayne on a horse riding around the schoolyards.
Where'd the horse come from?
Where did the horse come from?
Yeah, I mean,
are you back now?
Dwayne Robertson's a fascinating character, isn't it? I mean, he's completely out of place. Like, he just never seems comfortable. He's only comfortable with his lasso or on his horse. And he's just a country kid. And he probably can't wait to get his degree and get out of there and go back to working on the farm. He just knows that it's not for him. He's not going to make it long term. So he probably felt most comfortable in that environment. But, yeah, the rivalry with the varsity team, I understand it. Like, these bunch of show ponies who clearly weren't applied for those scholarships, Banks and maybe 1 or 2 others, are coming into their school, lowering their standing, cheapening their school name and their team name. I completely get the way they were treated. Like, it was a little bit harsh, but I think most people would act the same way.
Is the weirdest moment in D3 that nobody expects. And when you watch it as an adult, you go, why is this in a kid's movie? When Luis Mendoza climbs under the table and looks up the dress of a female sitting there, then looks at the camera and acknowledges that it's not bad. Like, thinking about it now, it's so weird.
That's jail time.
Also, why did he have to do that? Like, he's Louis Mendoza. Surely the guy... Like, girls are just coming to him, and he does get girls the whole way through. But he doesn't need to be that sleazy, does he?
No, I wouldn't have thought so. There's also an underlying fascination with animal poo here as well. You look in the first one, and Carp and all those guys when they were following the dog around, and then obviously the third one when they had the horse manure. So these guys have taken a prank and they've built on it over the episodes and series.
Prank
and stuff
progression.
Like that. Prank progression. Yeah, they've gone from following a dog around to actually just horse poo.
So, boys, what do we think? I wanted to ask, as I did at the end of the first Mighty Ducks, who is the most important player in this game, the last game? Let's talk about that. The most important player, because there's so many different journeys all of these athletes have taken, each having their own individual impact. I want to start you off by saying I think Dean Portman is probably the most influential player, even though he did nothing on the ice apart from throwing coal into the crowd or through that. But he was the enforcer. He got them back into it. And then he displayed by his physique when he was sitting in the penalty box for a while that he's probably on roids because he had that much of a rig for someone in college, and Bombay probably provided them to him because he's a cheat.
I think the one of the most disappointing ones is Goldberg. He's put himself before the team by trying to sabotage Julie the cat with her diet and offering to be her personal trainer. Now, I'm not in the best shape, but if someone came to me looking like Goldberg, offered to be my personal trainer, I'd probably have to decline. But I think he's definitely put his own interests ahead of the team, and for me that was disappointing. I think Goldberg for me is the disappointing one.
It's hard to understand how Julie the cat fell for that, being such a quality performer herself. And look, by this stage, Goldberg knows his limitations. He knows he's done. He's nowhere near the standard, so he's desperate. The most important player for me, I'll go Fulton Reed for a couple of reasons. Like, firstly, he provides the necessary physical capabilities. Like, they don't have too many big guys apart from Portman. But Fulton's actually one of the Ducks. Like, he's his own individual, right? He doesn't really buy into the team ethics that much. Fulton, I think you actually see all the way through a lot of humility. He actually has a lot of self-doubt, which is endearing. Like, early on, there's this whole, I heard the rumours that, you can't play because of your football contract. And he's like, well, people talk a lot of stuff. It doesn't mean it's true. It's as if he's got this big family drama going on in his life. Like, there's an embarrassment in his family life that is going around. Dude, you got a football scholarship. He's celebrating that. But he's got all this self-doubt. And then he gets coattailed by Conway to go on the rides and leave school. And he doesn't really like it. And he tells Charlie to get stuffed, and he goes and does his own thing. Like, all the way through, you see this soft side to Fulton Reed that I think endears him to the way the Ducks are, but he's then got the physical nature to his game, which is so important to their style of play.
That's very true.
Did you realise, or do you remember seeing in any of the vision of the games of him doing anything other than taking a shot from about 40 metres?
He knocks a few people over, doesn't he?
Yeah, that's about it. But you wouldn't say he's a good puck. You wouldn't say he's a good puck handler or he's good in close or anything like that. But
he's like a punter though. He's like a punter in the NFL. He's really good at what he's there to do, and he doesn't try to do anything else.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
But I mean, he's that important. How much research does Wolf the Dentist Stanson put into Fulton Reed? They see that shot coming months ago. They're ready for it. And Bombay's he's doing his own thing. He hasn't done any research whatsoever. But Fulton Reed, even though he only had that one skill, is so important by that stage that the opposition's already putting, Stanson had the projector up with film of Fulton Reed. That's the level of dedication required.
Can I just say one elephant in the room for me, and I'm going to go back to the second one here, is did no one notice Russ Tyler getting into the goalie outfit?
No, this is in the third one. So because
I thought it was the second one.
Goldberg scores the goal. So
no, but remember Russ Tyler, because they want him to get his knuckle puck away, and they give it back to Russ Tyler, and he's dressed as the goalie, and Dan just goes, the goalie!
That is a great point, and how nobody saw that. And then whether they called, like it was just in a line change. They're
illegal
like,
formation or something, surely.
It was really weird how that happened. But you look at all those technical things, like when Connie was in trouble in the Iceland game, and then Dwayne jumps on and lassos her, do they have too many men on the ice and they have to forfeit the game or get a penalty? Like, he got chucked in the box, yeah, but it's like too many men on the field. If that happened in AFL, reset the score, head count.
Yeah.
So how does that allowed? Hendrick's money, I'm telling you.
It runs the world, doesn't it?
All right, so we know that what happens at the end of D3, which is brilliant. Boys, I reckon we should jump into these social media questions because everybody's fantastic in them. So we've got them all in front of us. Let's start off, and I'm going to throw this over to you, Garby. Louis Mendoza, we spoke about his crossover into the Sandlot. How do you believe that he got the ability to represent his country at the Goodwill Games despite not having the ability to stop? This is from Alan Brown on Facebook.
Well, it all ties in with the fact that this team is there for show. They're there to attract eyeballs. He's already got a great, as I said, arguably the best athlete in American junior sport with what he'd done in baseball, what he was doing, and he could play ice hockey as well, right? So They've brought him in for that. 1.9 seconds blue line to blue line is ridiculous. The fact that he can't stop, Henrik's are like, who cares? This kid's going to attract more headlines. He's another story. Bombay's the Minnesota Miracle Man. He'll teach him how to stop. I don't care. Just get him in the team. He's good looking. He'll look good on the back of a Wheaties box. Remember, they got that big endorsement deal. Like, to him, that's all it is. Mendoza's in. And he's from Miami. That's a whole new market they can attract attention from.
That is true. Brandon Hancock via Instagram wanted to know, and this is a great point. It's about the flying V. Would it actually work if teams tried it? Because you know that if you're playing NHL on video games or if you're out doing rollerblading with your mates, you tried it. But if they weren't called the Ducks, they wouldn't have done the V. So the name is everything going back to Ducksworth. Because as I said, if they were called the Johnsons, their formation would be something really
And true, mate, if it was a Johnson formation, that'd be a hard one to get through too.
Don't say hard, mate. So what do you think about that, Matty? You answer that one, mate.
Well, the flying V actually got broken down, didn't it? At one stage, someone got through it. Was it Iceland or the varsity? I can't remember.
Both teams.
Iceland were all over it.
Yeah, so maybe they were showing too much film of that and not of Fulton. But yeah, I think it definitely broke down. It was good. It was a good little shock. Held some shock value, and it was one of those things that you could probably blindside another team with. But yeah, it's probably only get away with it once or twice before teams sort of get onto it.
Yeah, it's quite an obvious play when they all go stand behind the net and they hold up the V.
Yeah, I think you can tell what's going on there.
Like it works in Pee-wees, right? It doesn't work with
yeah, that's right.
Sorry, what did you say, Garby?
It works in Pee-wees.
True. Thomas on Twitter, who will win in a fight? Dean Portman or Fulton Reed? Who's going to win in a fight?
I'm going Portman.
Yeah, I think Reed's, as I said before, he's got a softer centre.
Yeah.
He's still a bit insecure. He's actually more sensitive than he's given credit for on the outside. And Portman's just ruthless. He doesn't care. The guy's barely got a heart. Like, he's just there to just knock people over and play hockey. He's just a big Portman.
Yeah, I agree. And anyone that wears a folded up bandana at the age of 17 or 18, they're going to be all right in a fight, I reckon.
Yep, true. Lockie on Twitter, Averman was probably the most underrated player to grace the game of hockey. Discuss.
Strongly disagree.
This is the worst call I've seen. Guy is a liability. Useless. He is in the team early on because he's actually good for morale, I agree. And then he's just part of the show. So it's like, we'll just take him with because, we can't cut too many because, I don't know, he talks a lot throughout the entire series.
So, boys, there's a lot of social media stuff there. Dan Fisher on Instagram and on Facebook, wanted to say his family started playing street hockey after seeing the Mighty Ducks, and we all have those stories. And then Tristan responded saying, if it wasn't for the movie, then he wouldn't have met Dan and his family, which is brilliant. It's brought us all together. What I thought we could do to wrap this up, and I think it's a great thing. It's a question without notice. What happens next? Off the top of your head, what do you think happens next? After they win, they continue studying, just even if it's a little bit of a storyline that you think happens, whether it is what happens to Banks, whether Portman gets expelled. We all know what happens to Goldberg because we've seen the photos of him over the past 12 months, and he's obviously in a bit of strife, which is sad to see. I don't like people laughing at that because this is our childhood we're trying to reflect. So, Garby, what do you reckon, mate? What happens next? Give us a storyline.
Banks goes pro, undoubtedly. Like, he's just got the mentality and the drive and the ability. So Banks plays in the pros. I don't see much else for the rest of them. Dwayne goes back to work on his family farm. Conway just gets a regular job somewhere, probably in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where he's just close to home, and he's Charlie Conway. So someone gives him a job, right, because he's good for business. Probably Charlie Conway Car Sales or something, so he can put his name to.
It's the big C.
People go buy a car so they can. Yeah, and it's the big C. Big C for car. First, for the rest of them, Goldberg, who falls on very hard time.
Yeah. Well, for me, Gordon goes back into law. Probably starts his own firm, I think, and he's all about winning. Got to win. 23-0 or whatever he was, and Banks goes pro. I agree with that one. Connie and Guy get married, have a couple of kids, and Guy goes on to coach the Pee Wee team.
Little ducklings.
He's almost he's almost starting to morph into a newer, younger version of Gordon, but he's married. And Julie the cat for me goes on and plays a Taylor Harris type role in lobbying for female ice hockey leagues all around the world.
Well, I think that's a great point because we did mention this in our chat the other day that why those women in the Mighty Ducks team were the only women playing in all of those leagues and the colleges as well. So obviously they're too good for the women's league. We're assuming that they've gone into the men's, which happens in some sport around the world, which is fantastic. I reckon this has been great, boys. And the real fact that Disney purchased a team called the Anaheim Mighty Ducks based on the movies and they went to the Stanley Cup, that just shows the power of that movie, and also the fact that what we've done over the past couple of weeks is actually had the opportunity to sit down and talk about what we're passionate about, I think is brilliant. And it seems to be really nostalgic for so many others as well, that this is part of their childhood. So I've really enjoyed this, boys. You?
Oh, mate, loved it. I had an absolute ball. It's definitely taken me back to being 11, 12-year-old on rollerblades. And, I can watch these movies flat out and not get sick of them at all. So it's just one of those things, isn't it?
I mean, me and a mate, when I was living in London, we went to Valencia to watch Barcelona and had a weekend in Spain, just a boys' trip. And we literally watched all 3 movies at night. Like, we had, we were in our mid-20s. It just brought back so many great memories. So it's great that we continue the chat around it. I hope that I didn't cut out too much and some of my spiels came across. But no, it was great to go over it all again.
It's been perfect, boys. Thank you very much for your time. And this has been great. You know what? Originally, we were like, let's chat for like 10 minutes, but we've spoken for over an hour, which is brilliant because there's so much to discuss and it's brought in so much passion. So thank you to everybody for getting involved on social media as well. And Garby, you wouldn't know this, mate. Maddie and I have done this little podcast called Best Team Men for, the best part of 12 months. But this year, we've really focused on putting a bit more of an effort in. And you're our very first guest, mate. So thank you very much to First Drop Wines. We are going to send you over a bottle of Mother's Milk Shiraz, which is First Dropper, a good friend of mine, Johnny Retzis and the team, and they make beautiful South Australian wine from the Barossa. So we're going to send you over a bottle of that, mate, so you can enjoy, mate, and chuck on the Mighty Ducks film and enjoy.
Beautiful. Thanks, lads. Thanks to Bombay and Banks and the whole team for allowing us to relive it.
We're going to press stop and hopefully this recorded, otherwise we're fucked.
Exactly.
See ya.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.